Hello and welcome to the Micronaut podcast. I am your host, Sergio del Amo. I am recording a very special episode today because I am joined by the crew from Agorapulse, who they are based, I think they are full remote now, but they are, their headquarters, I think they are in France. Hello, Benoit, how are you?
Hello. Glad to be here.
You are based in Paris, right? Or in Paris area?
Yes, we have our main office where the product is built in Paris, but the company is half remote, like a semi-remote company, and we have people in 14 countries, but they are mostly around sales, marketing, and support. For product building, it's mainly in France that it happens.
We are joined also by Vladimir. How are you, Vladimir?
Hello. I'm fine. You?
Good. You are based in Czech, right?
Yes, I'm currently in Prague.
Nice. And we have Simon as well.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
And Simon is in Poland, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly that. Totally in Poland.
And we are bringing you this podcast via the magic of the internet from 4 different locations at the same time. Ben, I have always been intrigued by your company. So Ben is the co-founder and CTO of Agora, right?
Yes.
So it's agorapulse.com. It's Agorapulse. I will include a link in the show notes if my English spelling is completely broken, which could very well be. What does Agorapulse do?
So we provide a social media management solution as a SaaS service. So to help brands and agencies to manage their social profiles. So without the tool, it's very chaotic to manage your online social presence. And we do connect all your profile. We organize, structure all those data, and we provide a nice interface for you to work and handle your presence as a team. So we are mainly aimed at small and medium businesses.
So I have an account. They have also, if anyone want to try, they have also like a free account to test the waters. I have a free account for my personal. So I don't have an Instagram account, but I use Twitter. I don't know if a lot, but I use Twitter some. And they have like, so you have ever tried to schedule tweets using TweetDeck? They have a very much nicer interface where you will have like a calendar view and you can like schedule your tweets and you can have like an inbox. So if you want to think about the email metaphor where you have an inbox, they have like a kind of a similar thing. So if anyone wants to like, it's overwhelmed by managing Twitter, and I understand that most of us are. Check them out because it's really cool. And I think especially if you have like a team, so we are facing some of these challenges managing the micro Twitter account. So if you have a tweet team and you have like someone that wants to write a tweet and is English not his mother language, and you want another pair of eyes to essentially review those drafts, so they are like Agorapulse is the kind of software that you are looking for. So Ben mentioned that is software as a service, which is really interesting. Is so they have many of the challenges of always on application, monthly billing. I assume you have a lot of scheduled tasks given the nature of your application.
Yeah, we have around 9,000 customers, and every month we have around 4,000 to 5,000 people trying the product for a month. So yeah, it's quite a lot of people.
How big is the company now?
So we are 130 employees. So half of the company is in France, and the other is around the world. And around 60 people work at product engineering. And now we are 45 purely at the tech and engineering. And we work like classical Spotify or Netflix squads around tribes, around the main feature of the product. And I'm handling a team of developer experience with experts in each part of the stack. So we have an expert for the front-end Angular. We have 2 experts here on the back-end, especially Groovy, Grails, and Micronaut. And we have an expert on the infrastructure and security. So we do help the squads to get a better developer experience, to manage all the framework upgrades, to do some proof of concept, to validate some architecture, etc., etc. So that's why we work a lot with Micronaut on the backend.
Wow, 130 employees. That's a lot of employees, man. A lot of responsibility. How old is Agora?
So we launched a product around 10 years ago in 2011.
And what's the technology stack right now, and what has evolved from?
So the history of the stack is that we started, the first one was Adobe called Fusion. So it's something that still exists nowadays. It was on the JVM. Then we moved pretty quickly to Grails. I think it was Grails 2 at that time. And then we upgraded Grails, and now we are migrating slowly to Micronaut. So from the beginning, we always been around the JVM technologies for the backend. On the front end, we also are very on Angular. So we started with AngularJS, so we moved to Angular 2, and we upgraded. Now we are working on the latest version of Angular. So it's very a JVM groovy ecosystem on the backend and an Angular ecosystem on the front end. And on the back, we are on AWS since the beginning. When they launched in 2008, we started to work with them. There are only 3 services. They had EC2, SQS, and SES. Now they have 100 services. But for us, it's great. We love AWS because it allows us to focus on bringing value to our customers, and all the infrastructure stuff, the scaling stuff, all the security we delegate to AWS.
They use a lot AWS, and they contribute a lot to the community in terms of plugins to use AWS services. So I've used, for example, in the past, Grails plugins that you open sourced to work with AWS services. And I think you have worked with DynamoDB from the beginning, right, for persistence?
Yes. We were a mix of RDS and DynamoDB. But for all the large data synchronization, we put it on DynamoDB.
They have a lot of Micronaut AWS libraries. So they have libraries for things such as Simple Email Service, S3, DynamoDB, SQS, SNS, and I think you are using a lot of WebSockets lately as well.
Yes, as we speak now, today, we have a big release of a WebSocket revamp based on Micronaut as well. So we'll tell you more about this later on. We'll see how it goes.
So I want to do another episode about AWS and have you back into the show, and we'll talk more into detail about what your libraries provide to users. And especially the DynamoDB library is really interesting because you provide like this repository access pattern similar to what users may have used if they have used Micronaut data, JDBC repositories, or if they have used the Spring data or GORM data services. So that's kind of the experience with interfaces with methods annotated with that query. So if you are ready or if you are interested and you cannot wait for the episode, check them out. I will include a link in the show notes. Have you migrated completely out of Grails, or are you still using Grails, or is Grails a Micronaut or only Micronaut now?
So it's a work in progress. Every new service we start, we do it in Micronaut, but we still have a lot of legacy app running on Grails, especially the very heavy ones that do the synchronization with the social networks. So it's a work in progress, and we are re-architecturing the app as well, so that all our squads are fully independent without any coupling. So they will have their own backend, their own front end, so they can release as much as they want. So this is a big project we are working on for the last 1 year and a half, and we hope that we will have fully migrated maybe in next year. So we'll see how it goes. But the goal is to get 100% on Micronaut.
That's another show that I want to make with you. So I want to have a show about consuming Micronaut libraries from Grails, challenges, benefits, things that work, things that don't. Also, so I know that Vladimir wrote a really nice blog post series about migrating a fresh Grails application to Micronaut. I will include a link in the show notes. So there is a lot to talk about that. But again, let's do that in a different episode. We have done a really long intro, and typically we do like the agenda section. So let me jump to the agenda section next. Do you have anything coming on your end that you would like to tell people about?
Nothing specific. We do publish Medium article when we are working on specific libraries that we launch or stuff like this. But right now, the big topic is our live real-time refactor based on Micronaut. So I guess we will write an article about it. We do have a POC on it that was published by Shimon, and maybe we will make some feedback on how it goes once it's fully launched on production.
Nice. So I will promote also. So in Agenda, if you are, Agora has a nice YouTube channel if you want to learn about social media. So there are a couple of really nice playlists there. I'm going to include a link in the show notes to things such as tips about using Twitter and things like that. So if you want to improve your social media game, I will include a link in the show notes. I want to plug a couple of things on the Micronaut agenda. So we keep doing Micronaut Live each Tuesday and Thursday at twitch.tv/MicronautFW. So we have created an application from scratch and we continue to build it. Last time, at least at the time that we are recording, we did wire security using Amazon Cognito. Are you using Amazon Cognito?
No.
You are not. I thought you may be using it because I saw that you have like a library for simple token service, and sometimes people use that in combination with Cognito, and I thought that maybe you were using that. So if anyone wants to learn about Micronaut or hang up and ask anything, I am every Tuesday and Thursday on Twitch. And if you don't have the time, I understand. We are publishing those videos on demand on the Micronaut YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/c/MicronautFW as well. And we have two big training events on January. So we have the whole week of January the 10th until January the 15th. We have 4 days of Micronaut security training from Monday to Thursday, 3 hours each day. And we have on Friday we have a Micronaut testing tips and tricks where we have 3 hours where we will cover things such as how to avoid beam pollution in your test, how to use Micronaut test to the fullest potential. Now we support if you are using Micronaut and JUnit, we support native image testing, so we'll probably show that as well. So if you are interested in testing, check it out. If you join the security one, I think you have you attend for free the testing tips and tricks. I will include links to both in the show notes. And with the agenda out of the way, let me jump to the next section. For Level Up, which is this section where we do like a small tips and tricks about how to use the framework, I want to point you to util classes that are in Micronaut core. So if you are using Micronaut, you will have access to these two classes for sure. One of these classes is called string utils, and the other one is called collection utils. So the string util class has, for example, things such as utilities to I think capitalize strings, and also like so check it out. It has many it has, for example, the typical so Agora uses a lot Groovy, but for those who don't use Groovy and use Java, they don't enjoy the Groovy truth. So sometimes they have to check that a string is not null and that is not empty. And there is like a method in string utils called isEmpty for strings, which will do essentially what the Groovy truth will do. And we have another class called collections utils, which if you have used in Java, for example, the collections.singleton map, which takes only a key and a value, in collections utils, you have like, it will take like an iterable, so similar to Kotlin map off, or in Groovy when you have like we use the brackets, so essentially like utility classes to create like sets and maps and things like that, utility methods. I will include a link in the show note to both collection utils and string utils. Use them because they are there, so you don't have to write those util methods. And if you have any util methods that you think it should be there, PRs are welcome, and the whole community can benefit. Let me jump to the main section. And in the main section, so Ben already talked a lot about how they are using. So are you using Micronaut? How are you deploying Micronaut applications? That's probably the question. Are you deploying to Elastic Beanstalk? Are you deploying to an EC2 machine directly? Are you deploying to Lambda? Are you deploying to Elastic Container Service? Or
So what you like, we like with Micronaut is a very versatile framework, and it allows you to work for many use cases. So we have, depending on the use case, we can deploy more fat app, like small monolithic apps that will handle many endpoints. So for that, we do deploy on Beanstalk most of the time. So for a main feature, when they have to provide API, we have a main app for them. We do also deploy Fat Lambda on serverless on AWS Lambda, where we also can provide multiple endpoints through AWS Lambda. And we do also very, very narrow scoped functions based on Micronaut that are also deployed on AWS Lambda. It could be a consumer for SQSQ. It could be a producer. It could be many things. So depending on the use case, the team will choose where they want to deploy the app, depending on the size and the function of the app. But it's mostly Beanstalk and AWS Lambda.
That's nice. I am a big fan of Beanstalk. So I'm a big fan of just pointing a Route 53 to Beanstalk and deploying there, and load balancer for free. I mean, not for free. You have the load balancer already set up, and auto-scaling are really nice. And really, really nice to hear that you are using both HTTP triggers for Lambda and... so one of the things that I am always trying to convey is Lambda is much more than HTTP triggers. So using Lambda with API gateway is great. It's a great feature, but there are many use cases for using Lambda where you have different triggers, such as the one that you described, like an SQS topic or an S3 upload or things like that.
Lambda are very great when you have to do integration of existing services. So if you want to plug to SNS, if you want to plug to DynamoDB event, for example, that's fantastic, because in a few clicks you will get the event, and you just have to focus on the logic and not on the infrastructure side of it. So,
what programming language are you using for developing in the backend?
Java Groovy.
Java and Groovy?
Java Groovy. And on the data, they use a little bit of Python, but it's only on the data team. But for the development, it's only Java and Groovy. It was very, very, very Groovy at the beginning, but the more people we get, the more we get Javaists that like Java very much. So we are in the middle. Some are very Groovy, some are very Java, depending on the team.
Are you using a Spock for testing, or are you using JUnit? Or
Yeah, only Spock. Yeah, only Spock, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good combination. I think Java and Graph for the main class path and Groovy Spock for the test class path. I think that's a really nice combo. So I would like to talk about some of the libraries that you have released, some of the Micronaut libraries, and hopefully I can work with you to have them published in Micronaut Launch, so that anyone who wants to use them can have an easy path to see the dependency and add them to their applications. The first one that I would like to start is, so what's Recurly? That's probably a question for you, Ben, because I think that probably is a big part of the money machine there at Agora.
What you mean, Recurly? No, what you are talking about?
Yeah, Recurly, yeah.
So yes, Recurly was our subscription system until now, because we are right now in the middle of migration to ChargeB. So we will provide maybe a ChargeB library soon. But since, for the 7-8 years, Recurly was our main subscription system. So I think in the beginning we were using an existing plugin that we found on Recurly, and then since it was not maintained, we took the maintenance on our repo, and yeah, Recurly is at the heart of it, because it's most of these things is you have to connect on their webhook so that you can have a real-time management of the subscription, and yeah, webhook is the main topic of the plugin of the library.
For users using the plug, so the idea is that Recurly published, and this is a topic that I see many, and I do many of these libraries myself, is some of these big third-party services, since Java is so popular, they often publish a Java library. And what you have done for Recurly is, so you have created a factory and some configuration, which allows users to essentially, many of these services, they often have like an API key, right? So you have configuration to provide that API key, and then you have a factory which essentially registers the main class of these Java clients that they provide as a bean in the Micronaut context, so that any consumers of the library can inject that class. I think that's a pattern that we will see a lot, and I think that's great. I think that you took the time to create the library in open source. That's fantastic. Then you have another service which intrigued me, which is Micronaut Snitch. I checked the documentation, and there is what's this dead man switch? Vladimir, can you talk me what is this thing, and what are you using this thing for?
Well, this is the thing you can use if you want to check that your cron jobs are running. So you have a cron job which is running every hour, and if it's not running, it will trigger some notification from the dead man snitch service. So
you go to so if I understood correctly, you go to this dead man snitch service, and you create an expectation, right? You say like, I expect to get a ping every hour.
Exactly.
And then you go to your code, and you are like in the library you created an annotation, so it's really nice. So you annotate a method with @snitch. So they are leveraging the mic around advised, and you are essentially, when the method executes, which is when your cron job executes, you ping that service. So if something wrong happened, right, you don't ping the service, and then the expectation fail on the other service, and they notify you. Is that the...
Exactly. So if the service doesn't listen or doesn't get any ping, it will send you some email or just publish a Slack message, and you know that the cron job is not running for some reason.
That's cool.
It's really, when we found this service, it was like a lifesaver for us, because you can find a lot of monitoring service to check that you are up, that you got response time on your API. But for jobs and for workers, there was not so many monitoring tool. And this one is very basic, very simple, but it works very well, and we have been using it for years now.
Yeah, I didn't know about this tool, but when I checked your library and I checked the service, it made complete sense to me, and I understood the use case completely, because I know that for many clients we have they have like dashboards to see that the jobs are scheduled and when was the last one run. But the problem with our dashboard is that you have to log in and check the dashboard to see if the thing was actually running, right? So I understand that what you want is, you don't want someone to be like all the time looking at the dashboard. You want just to be notified when something wrong happens, right? Which, I think it makes a lot of sense. Then I saw this other utility. What is Micronaut Rethrow? Anyone? Is it Simon or Vladimir?
Yeah, so this is pretty similar. So we are using Sentry for logging errors. And the problem is that if the error is not logged from Lambda...
Give me a second, Vladimir. So let's go back to that. But you said you are using Sentry for... this is like a service for centralized logging management, right?
Yes, especially if you have some errors or bugs in your code, they're just going to, not into just logs, but also to Sentry. And you can see, where the bugs are happening, and you also get notifications.
How complicated it is for a user to use Sentry in their Micronaut application? What this does involve?
It basically just means setting up an account and getting some credentials. And they have adapters for various log services like log4j, logback, log4j, and simple logging4j. So basically, you just configure the logger, and it will publish the bugs or errors into Sentry directly.
So it's adding, if I understood correctly, is once you have the Sentry account configured, you in a Micronaut application, which by default it uses logback, you will add a dependency which will be the assume it has the adapter from the Sentry logback adapter, which essentially will you use the same configuration, so the same logback.xml file, or do you have to change that?
So there is also Micronaut log for AWS. Basically, just you replace this for logback. So you remove logback from your Lambda functions, for example, and use this Micronaut log for AWS. And there is the sample configuration you can just copy paste, and it's just going to log directly to Sentry for you.
So you are not using CloudWatch for your logs?
No, just for verification. For example, if there are some traces or debug prints, then we use it, but the bugs are logged into Sentry.
So let's rewind the tape and let's go back to because I am really interested in because that's a topic that we don't have any guide material about centralized logging, and I know that people in their real lives, most of companies such as yours, they use centralized logging. So I have heard about Sentry, and there are like a couple of other centralized logging solutions, and I am always interested in what people are using and if they are finding any difficulties integrating into their Micronaut applications. You created this library called Rethrow, and how does it fit into the Sentry story?
So the point is, if there's an exception thrown in the Lambda code, so this was mainly for the Lambda code, it gets logged into the CloudWatch, but it won't be logged into the logging system such as log4j, logback, or whatever you are using. So this annotation, if you annotate a service, it's going to log the error into your provider, logback, log4j, or anything else, and then it's going to either throw it again or just handle it a different way. And the point is that when you log it with the provider you choose, it's also going to log into Sentry, into the other providers you are using for the central logging. So it's not only in CloudWatch, but it's also in Sentry or any other provider.
So I thought that you were using it to map an exception to another one, but you are using it more for like kind of also for that, but also like for logging to a third party.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Like in the moment you see the exception, and where are you where are you using this annotation in the Lambda functions? Are you annotating the handler method with?
No, because the handler basically there is no way how to use AOP with the handler.
Correct, because
the handler is instantiated by Amazon.
It's instantiated by Amazon, and we do like that's for anyone listening to the podcast. When you have a class, so if you see like a handler, not just for AWS Lambda, but for GCP or Azure or all of these functions, it's not the Micronaut framework who instantiates that class. It's the cloud provider instantiate that class, and what we do is we call so we start the application context in the constructor of the handler, and then we call .inject this. What that means is that we wire the injection in that class, but you cannot have like AOP in the methods of that class. So that's why the @inject injection works in a handler, but that constructor injection doesn't work in a handler.
Yes, so there is basically the pattern to keep the handler as thin as possible. So it's basically just converting the incoming event, and there is the main service handling the logic of the function.
So it's then in the main services where you will apply the rethrow annotation.
Yes, exactly.
Then you have another one, which is so I have not used, but I have seen Segment, and I have only heard good things about Segment. And I saw actually that Twilio bought the company like a year ago, something like that, or maybe 2 years ago. And so how do you use Segment, and what does micro segment Agorapulse library provides?
Yes, so segment is, if I take the philosophical aspect of it, there is always a dilemma when you build your tech stack on a startup, should you buy or should you make? So if it's related to our Agorapulse business, like social media, we want total control of everything. For the frameworks we use Angular, we use Micronaut, and we build on top of those open source framework, and we contribute back for that. And then for everything else, infra, security, monitoring, data, we prefer to buy off-the-shelf solution so that we can focus on delivering value to our customers. And Segment is a very good example of that because you can build a full data stack, data lake, ETL, everything based on open source solution, but it takes a lot of resources, it takes a lot of times. And with Segment, you get all of that as a SaaS service. They provide you a library depending on your stack, so they have a very good Java SDK. And then you instrument your code with events, with tracking, business events. You send this to Segment API, and then they will redispatch this to all the integration that you want. So it could be an integration to your support ticketing system like Intercom or Zendesk. It could be sent also to your own data warehouse. So you have multiple sources. You send all the data to Segment, and then they will dispatch it. And all the logic is very well organized. They have a very good UI as well. So it allows you to delegate all your data lake to Segment. And for the little story, the good thing with that is that when we plug our data warehouse like 2 years ago, we were using Segment for several years. And we got 3 years of history of our data that we already sent to them because they kept it in their data lake. So it's very good for the data teams so they can focus again on adding value to the other teams and to do analysis, and all the infrastructure is handled by Segment. And Segment is like all the other library we mostly provide for Micronaut. They are wrapper around the service to ease the developer experience for our teams. And Segment is exactly that. So to ease the configuration and ease the usage of the integration. For the integration of all the service you use, nowadays you use a lot of SaaS service all over the place. You have one SaaS service for support. For example, you use Intercom. Then the sales and marketing, they will use HubSpot for all sales related stuff. And when you do instrument your code with business event, for example, this user has signed up, then he has subscribed. So we are going to attach a plan with a value to his plan, and we send this to Segment once, and then it is redispatched on all the other APIs that you have plugged in. So it will go to HubSpot, it will go to Intercom, and you won't have to do all the integration of all the API of the third party you use. So you instrument once, and that's all. And then Segment is doing all the rest of the integration for you. So it's a big life saver. It's in terms of productivity. Yeah.
A user sign up and you may create like a Recurly entry or something like that.
Yes.
And for like kind of the monitoring, and do you use Newrelic?
Yes, so you are talking about log aggregation. So the two main big systems are Datadog and Newrelic that you face. So we use Newrelic since day one as well. Newrelic started as an application monitoring system, and then they grew up to do some log aggregation error system. But we use mainly Newrelic for application performance monitoring. We do have also alerts. So they have a service called Synthetics that allow you to ping all the API all over the world to see if you're up and have a good latency. And we use it also to create dashboards. They have a very good dashboard system. So you can send some custom events to Newrelic. They could be business events, but they could be also technical events. And then on top of that, you can build your dashboards and you can build alerts. So for example, you can have very business related alerts. If the system detects that we don't publish for the last 15 minutes to Facebook, then you will have an alert from Newrelic. So it's good for monitoring your technical infrastructure, but also to monitoring your business more related events.
I think I used back then your so you open sourced a Grails Newrelic plugin, and if I remember correctly, so Newrelic keeps track of the HTTP. So when your API is like responding non-happy HTTP status code, so if your API like throwing like 500 or 400 error codes and things like that, are you using that? And if yes, what do you have So what does the how does it work with Micronaut controllers? And is your library the one that essentially connects both worlds and frees the user of like writing Micronaut controllers and not caring about doing anything, and the library is the one that essentially takes care of reporting those failures to Newrelic, or how does it work?
So I will let Vlad or Shimon answer on this one, but just to give you the big overview is that you plug an agent, a jar agent, when you start your application. And it's quite magical because once you do that, it's going to be able to run inside your app and to analyze everything which is happening in your app. And on top of that, it will give you a lot of performance data. So it could be at the controller endpoint, but also it will analyze also the SQL. Also the DynamoDB, for example, it will give you the performance of your app and all the call you are making to DynamoDB or to RDS. So it opens the black box of performance, and it allows you to dig when you have an issue and to analyze what's going on over there. So in terms of Micronaut, yeah, I had that, Shimon.
Yeah, so this is a big. This is quite an issue with Newrelic and Micronaut because it's still reporting as a netty event loop. So if you call a controller, you just see some netty stuff happening in there. So there is a part of the Micronaut Newrelic HTTP library which can help you, but you still have to combine this with some Newrelic annotation, like trace annotations. So if actually you can help us to make Micronaut and Newrelic work better together, you will have a better voice than us. So it's halfway there. So we can get the controller information, but it's now logging as a custom events. So we mainly use it for the custom events to, for example, see how long does some processes take, and then also for the application monitoring, as Ben mentioned. So, for example, what the SQL executions takes long or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. Because I remember the persistent part of Newrelic was really interesting as well. Happy to help if I can. So I have not used Newrelic in a while, but when I used it, it was really a really nice tool, and I know many companies use it a lot. So are you using Newrelic also like for tracing? Is that correct? So when you call like a service to another service, are you using any? So if I understood your architecture correctly, you have some parts that are, it's not microservice, but you have like parts that are different teams which have different services which are APIs, right? And this API may call another of your APIs. Are you like tracing so are you using anything like Jaeger or Zipkin or Newrelic to trace, or are you using like a log correlation ID for a Sentry or?
Not yet.
We don't have a big chain of microservices right now. They are very single purpose, and usually we don't have to trace a request from the client up to a lot of services until now. We try to keep it as much simple as possible. So I know that Newrelic does that, distributed tracing, but we never use it.
Yeah, I think if you manage to have to do like a lot of tracing, I think that's for the best. I think that's probably make you more productive, because I think tracing has its sets of problems as well. So I think that's completely a good decision on your side. Then, of course, you are social media in the social media space, so you integrate with Facebook SDK. And what's the story there? Because does Facebook provide a Java? I guess they provide an official Java client, or they don't?
No, they don't.
They don't?
Yeah. We have been using our REST API most of the time. So our plugin library are mostly wrapped around a REST API. Same for Twitter. We were using Twitter 4G as well as a Java library, but they are open source library.
Yeah, Twitter 4G is like third-party client, right? It's just one guy providing the library. Yeah, amazing that these companies don't provide an official Java client. So if you are like using Micronaut and Facebook, what does the Micronaut Facebook Agora library do for you?
The Grace plugin was more elaborated because it was also integrating the Facebook JS SDK. On the Micronaut, we only focused on the backend side, so it's mostly a wrapper. I think it's still around REST-FB, Van?
Yes, it is. So it basically pre-configured REST-FB client for you, and it allows you to have multiple clients, or call the Facebook API as a user with the tokens, and it's more or less.
Plus the testing utility. We have this Facebook SDK mock server where whenever you integrate your backend application with Facebook, you can easily mock Facebook REST API calls just to make your unit testing much smoother.
What are you using? Because what are you using to test web server expectations? Because I saw in some of your libraries that you were using ersatz. Are you using ersatz, or are you using just Micronaut HTTP server on the test class path?
No, we are using ersatz whenever we want to have some mock REST API, either internal or Facebook or something like that. So it just serves the Facebook responses downloaded before. We store it in the test resources and serve it from ersatz.
Yeah. So for those who are new to ersatz, I think it's an undertow server, right?
Yes.
So what it starts. So it starts. So the idea is that you are working in your Micronaut application, and you have a service that does a call to another REST service. Just call this the Facebook JSON API, and you want you to test how your application behaves is the Facebook API response, whatever, right? And what you do in your test is that you create this ersatz server, which essentially is starting a server for your test, and you say like, when you invoke me in this path, I'm gonna respond this JSON, and you can create like expectations. So you can say like, I expect that I will be called twice or only once, and essentially you can like typically what this means is that you have to have a way of changing the URL of your external service programmatically, and essentially pointing just in the test to this mock server. So it's kind of a mocking server solution, we can say, I guess. You say that's more or less, right?
Yes.
That's like I probably did a terrible job describing ersatz, but I will include a link in the show notes. I personally don't use ersatz anymore. And maybe this is because I am biased and I use Micronaut for everything, but I use Micronaut. I ran a lot of times an additional Micronaut HTTP server on the test class path, and I serve the responses from there. And we have a couple of really, if you are like interested in seeing this in action, if you go to the Micronaut security project, we have a couple of tests where we start up to like 4 Netty servers on a single test to like test like I wrote a test, for example, the last test that I wrote was like we wanted to behave how a Micronaut application was behaving with 4 remote authorization servers with different JSON web key set endpoints. And we had a user which reported an issue where he was seeing like a lot of so the way we were like refreshing the keys was not the most performant way ever, and we created a test and we were able like to test it that way. So ersatz is cool, so I'm not criticizing the library by any means, and they have like out of the box like a DSL for defining expectations, something that we don't have with the approach that we do in using Micronaut. But if you just want to like start a mock server, that's really easy with Micronaut, and that's something that I will cover on my testing tips and tricks. So this is a shameless plug for my testing tips and tricks workshop on January. But yeah, absolutely, ersatz is great.
It's worth saying that ersatz is just maybe more human-friendly alternative for WireMock. Anyone who worked with WireMock knows how maybe not it's not very difficult, but it always You always go to documentation, you always copy-paste some recipes how to set up WireMock correctly to serve the HTTP response you expect with ersatz, with its DSL. It's very, very simple, and using Undertow doesn't cost that much if it comes to test performance.
Yeah, it's really nice. So I think the DSL is really easy to read the test that uses ersatz, because you see clearly what is actually under test and what the expectations are. So we covered several of the Agora Micronaut libraries, and I would like to put these libraries into the business oriented libraries. So libraries that you use when you are like using all these third-party services that software as a service companies such as Agora may use. You have also some libraries which are what I call more operational libraries, and I don't know, maybe Worker you don't consider operational library. What is the Worker library do? And yeah, what does Micronaut Worker do? And I have some questions for you after you explain what it does.
Okay, so the Worker library is like the scheduled annotation on steroids. So it has single purpose annotations like fixed rate and other stuff, so you don't have to put everything in the scheduled one. But the value added is it supports some queues, so you can queue in one job and consume in another, so which is pretty common for our use cases. And that's basically the main reason. So it's like the scheduled annotation with consumers, producers, and the queues.
So in Micronaut, we have the at scheduled annotation for anyone who is new to Micronaut, which essentially you will use when you need, like, I need this thing to run every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. You annotate with at scheduled. And what you did is you created, are you using at all the function? So are these new annotations, are they alias to the at schedule annotation, or are these is completely new logic? So are you using the at schedule logic at all, or?
I've borrowed some logic, but I'm not using at scheduled at all. So
got you.
Basically, the point is to have some kind of distributed jobs, so you can produce some content or some events on one server and then consume them in another one. But it's totally clear from the user perspective, from the developer perspective.
So is the idea that at 4 o'clock you publish something to a simple queue service via one of these methods annotated with one of these annotations provided by the Worker library?
You don't need to have SQS or anything else just to get started, but there is the SQL queue adapter, or how to call it. Yes, so for example, you have a job at 4 in the morning which will collect our emails to send some newsletter. So you will produce the list of newsletters. And then you have the consumer job, which is also annotated to run, I don't know, every hour or whatever. And it will consume in a different server. It will just get the emails from the queue and send the email itself.
Initially, it was a Grails plugin, and it was using Quartz under the hood. Quartz jobs.
If you are, especially I guess if you are in the AWS infrastructure and the at schedule is not like powerful enough, check the Micronaut Worker library. You have two other libraries which are really intriguing to me. One is Console, which I think if anyone listening has used Grails, it will bring some fun memories to them. What is the Micronaut Console library?
So it allows you to run any arbitrary code in the context of the application. So it was based on the Grails console, where you basically can written in a text editor and a script to execute in your Grails application. And this can do the same for Micronaut. It doesn't have any UI, so you can run it from the command line or from your IDE and execute it. on the remote server. So there are some support for Micronaut security. So of course you want this kind of powerful endpoint to be secured. So you can just basically get some authentication tokens from your application and then execute the script on it if you want. And there's also IP filtering or user filtering, or the security is base for this one. It's very important because you don't want to let anyone to execute any arbitrary code in your application. But it's kind of like a keyhole surgery if you want to do some migration scripts or something like that.
Exactly. So what I was thinking is this is kind of what's the use case for this is like, so in Grails, I think there were always like two use cases. One was like, which I don't think really applies now, but sometimes running a Grails application was slow. So the console plugin allowed you like if you wanted to test something, right? You could like just run some code and actually test that the code behaved as you expect it to behave before actually like adding it or something like that. And the second use case, and I think that's probably, if I understood what you told me correctly, is you need to do like a hotfix in production and you didn't want to like redeploy, and maybe the hotfix what involved was like maybe like doing some data manipulation. So you need to fix something like involved, like, I don't know, it was not just like running a query, but maybe it was like calling a couple of services, getting some data from the database, manipulating it a little bit and saving it again. That was a use case that the console plugin was often used, and I think this could apply as well for Micronaut applications, right?
Yes, you are correct. It's basically, as you said, it's some advanced data manipulation very often. Like if it's something which couldn't be done by the SQL script or something like that, or for DynamoDB entities. And the other one is also correct. So if you want to test why is something failing, for example, you have some issue, you want to debug it, either locally or remotely, then you can just run a very small piece of code which is broken somehow and be more able to inspect the results, or even debug it locally, attach the debugger and see what's happening in the application. And I would say that there is a third use case is either to inspect the configuration. So if the configuration is set properly for all the sources, there might be multiple sources like environment variable or system properties or whatever. And the other one is to check the presence of the beans. So sometimes the bean should be there, but it's not there, and you want to test this use case.
Yeah, makes sense completely. The last library that I want to talk, and this I promise will be the last, is Pierrot, or how do you pronounce it? Because this is a French word, right? Well, that's probably a question for you, Berg.
I think Shimon can say it very well because he's practicing his French. But it's Pierrot, yeah. Pierrot in French, yeah.
I was trying to find some better name, but no one gave me some better name for this one.
So, what's the high-level pitch of this library? And this is a really different library from the other ones.
Yeah, so this is not a library, it's a CLI application made in Micronaut, compiled with GraalVM. And so me, Shimon, and Ben is a lead of the developer experience team. So we have to somehow manage not just one repository, but tens of repositories. And for example, if you want to, let's say I want to upgrade Micronaut. So I would wanted to have some simple command just to run and replace the Micronaut version equals the version in the Gradle properties files. So I can now do it with one call to this command, and it will do it to every repository the particle GitHub token has access. And it will open PRs, and it will create the project in GitHub, kind of a dashboard. And then you just go and see, okay, it's okay for this project, but this repository needs more attention because it broke the continuous integration, GitHub Actions usually. And then you are able to migrate tens of repositories at once. So typical example, I've described in the post on Medium was to upgrade test containers. So I wanted to upgrade test containers in every repository we are having in Agorapulse. And I just issued this particular command and just fix the places where there are some other problems.
Yeah. So this is a tool that seems really interesting for us, for Micronaut core developers, because Micronaut GitHub organization has like around 40 modules. And we used to have a GitHub Micronaut Guides organization which has like 100 projects, which we have now archived, and we have like all the guides in a single project. But we have this problem at all, which is and we are trying to automate as much as we can because we are a small team, and this is a problem. So multi-repos maintenance, we use the Dependabot a lot. Still, sometimes you have to do like PRs manually that Dependabot cannot do it for you because they may involve, I don't know, like we are, for example, updating our builds, and this requires like changing the settings.gradle file. So we are using Gradle to build Micronaut modules. Yeah, sometimes things cannot be like automated with Dependabot, and you need something like this. So this is a tool that, at least for me, is really, really interesting, and I will check it out for sure. And I encourage anyone that manages multiple repositories to check it out, because I strongly believe that. So one of the things that maybe it's because now I'm working in open source, but it's really important for companies to keep up to date with the latest versions of the frameworks, because often the whole resources of development in the frameworks are only like put into the latest versions. So we have an episode in Micronaut where we talk about the Micronaut release strategy. It's episode 2, and the branching. But so I'm not saying like every company has to be on the very latest version of Micronaut, but if you make a routine in your company to like upgrade to the, I don't know, maybe not the latest, but the previous mine or something like that, the migration path will be much simpler for you. And I think this will save you money on the long. I'm not on the long term. I think it will save you money on the short term, to be honest, because I think that you will not be stuck in all versions. So any tool that can help companies to like do migration faster, and I really like the approach that you took, that you are like creating PRs. So that will give confidence to people that it's not like this is like doing changes like crazy and you have no control about it. It's like you create a PR, and then if you don't like or as you said, the CIL fails, you cannot like accept the changes. So that will be Pierrot. I will include a link in the show notes because my French is not really up game, but I think we covered a lot of ground. We covered a lot of libraries. I don't want to cover more libraries today. As you see, Agora rocks, and they have a lot of Micronaut open source libraries. I'm gonna jump to the last two sections of the podcast. The first one is thanking our sponsors. This episode was brought to you thanks to the Micronaut Foundation. Many thanks to our corporate sponsors, our ambassador sponsor, Object Computing, and our two bronze sponsors, Safri.net and Visor Games. Also, many thanks to our community sponsors, those individuals who support the framework via donations. Individuals such as Corbinian Balch, Gis Loisnik, Lucas Morachev, Jen Weiss, Jeff Scott Brown, Danilo Marquez, Edgar Ruiz Navarro, Goran Eriksson, Andrew McKee, Balasubramanian, Rengasamy, Philip Eisenbach, Hassam Muhoudini, and Jason Silner. Many thanks to all of you. And if you are interested in supporting the framework, visit micronaut.io/foundation. We are going to wrap the podcast for today. I would like to thank Ben, Vladimir, and Simon for being in the podcast. I promise that I will make Simon talk more the next time he's on the show, because he was quite quiet today. And I would like to thank you really, guys, for your contributions to both Grails and Micronaut. And this goes especially to you, Ben. Thanks a lot for putting the resources of your company to make these open source libraries. We have not done a great job on promoting your libraries, and I want to rectify that and make the libraries more visible because they rock. So thanks to the three of you, and if you want to say anything before we wrap it up, this is the moment.
Well, thank you to the team as well, to the Micronaut team and the Great team as well. We are just on the Paris and French side. Maybe we'll also try to be a little bit more vocal and to organize some meetup around Micronaut in Paris as well. So we will let you know. We are going to work with the Jug in Paris to organize this.
Yeah, if you need any remote speaker, happy to help. If you ever need a remote speaker, and when the COVID situation clears out, I think my wife will be happy to have an excuse to travel to Paris. So that will be always a good possibility. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening to the show. We see each other in 2 weeks, and thanks for using Micronaut.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.